Chronobiology and modern life, biological time in an industrial society. Introduction. Chronobiology is the study of biological time. Although the field is often associated with sleep research, it encompasses a much broader investigation into the temporal organization of living systems. Organisms do not exist in a static environment. They inhabit a world structured by recurring cycles, including the alteration of day and night, seasonal changes, lunar rhythms, and tidal patterns. Over evolutionary time, biological systems have developed mechanisms that allow them to anticipate these recurring events and organize physiology accordingly. The central concern of chronobiology is not merely the measurement of time, but the relationship between biological processes and predictable environmental cycles. Researchers have identified biological clocks in organisms ranging from bacteria to human beings. These clocks generate rhythms that continue even when environmental signs are removed, demonstrating that biological timing is not simply a reaction to external events, but an internally generated property of living systems. The study of these mechanisms has transformed understanding of physiology, behavior, metabolism, cognition, and health. Among the various biological rhythms identified by chronobiologists, the circadian rhythm occupies a particularly important position. Circadian rhythms are approximately 24-hour cycles that correspond to the rotation of the Earth and the resulting alternation of light and darkness. In human beings, circadian organization influences sleep and wakefulness, hormone secretion, body temperature, cognitive performance, immune function, and metabolic regulation. The circadian system therefore provides one of the most important frameworks through which human biology is organized. Biological clocks and anticipation. One of the most significant contributions of chronobiology has been the demonstration that organisms anticipate environmental change rather than simply responding to it. Conventional explanations of behavior often assume that environmental events occur first and that organisms react afterwards. The chronobiological perspective is fundamentally different. The daily transition from sleep to wakefulness provides an instructive example. Physiological systems begin preparing for waking before an individual becomes conscious. Hormonal changes occur in advance of awakening. Body temperature begins to rise. Cardiovascular systems prepare for increased activity. These adjustments occur because biological clocks generate an internal representation of time that allows the organism to anticipate predictable environmental transitions. This capacity for anticipation provides substantial evolutionary advantages. Food resources may be available at particular times of day. Predators may be more active during specific periods. Environmental conditions, such as temperature and light, follow recurring patterns. Organisms that can prepare for these changes before they occur are likely to function more effectively than organisms that simply react after the fact. Chronobiologists therefore describe biological clocks as mechanisms that enable organisms to coordinate physiology with environmental regularities. Rather than serving as passive indicators of time, biological clocks actively organize biological activity across the day. They ensure that different physiological processes occur at appropriate times and in appropriate sequence. This temporal organization is essential because biological systems frequently depend upon precise coordination among multiple organs, tissues, and cellular processes. The circadian system. Although biological timing mechanisms exist at multiple scales, the circadian system has received particular attention because of its pervasive influence on human physiology. Research has demonstrated that circadian organization extends throughout the body. Biological clocks are not confined to a single location, but are distributed across numerous tissues and organs. At the center of this system lies a structure known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN. Located within the brain, the SCN functions as the principal circadian pacemaker in mammals. It receives information about environmental light conditions and coordinates timing signals throughout the body. The SCN is often described as a master clock because it synchronizes numerous subsidiary clocks located in peripheral tissues. The existence of peripheral clocks represents one of the most important developments in modern chronobiology. Research has demonstrated that individual cells throughout the body possess molecular mechanisms capable of generating circadian rhythms. The liver contains clocks. So does the digestive system. Components of the immune system contain clocks. Cellular timing mechanisms are therefore not restricted to the nervous system, but form part of a distributed network that influences virtually every aspect of physiology. This argument allows biological timing to operate simultaneously at multiple levels. The SCN coordinates overall temporal organization, while peripheral tissues maintain local rhythmic processes relevant to their particular functions. Together, these mechanisms form an integrated circadian system that regulates daily physiological activity. The molecular basis of circadian rhythms. Advances in molecular biology have provided increasingly detailed explanations of how circadian rhythms are generated. Research recognized by the 2017 Nobel Prize in Physiology of Medicine demonstrated that circadian timing depends upon molecular feedback loops involving specific genes and proteins. These mechanisms operate through cycles of gene expression and protein production. Certain genes are transcribed, producing molecular instructions that are translated into proteins. These proteins subsequently participate in processes that inhibit the activity of the genes responsible for their production. As proteins degrade, inhibition diminishes and the cycle begins again. Through this sequence of molecular interactions, biological systems generate rhythms that approximate 24 hours in duration. Remarkably, variations of these mechanisms appear across diverse forms of life. Circadian timing systems have been identified in organisms ranging from cyanobacteria to plants, fungi, insects, and mammals. Although details differ among species, the existence of comparable timing mechanisms across such a wide range of organisms suggests that biological clocks represent a fundamental feature of life rather than a specialized adaptation confined to particular groups. The discovery of molecular clock mechanisms has reinforced a central conclusion of chronobiology. Biological timing is not imposed upon organisms from the outside. It is generated internally through processes embedded within the structure and function of living cells themselves. Light as a biological signal. Circadian clocks generate internal rhythms, but they must remain synchronized with the external environment if they are to function effectively. This synchronization process is known as entrainment. In human beings, light serves as the most important environmental timing signal. Exposure to light influences the phase of circadian rhythms and allows biological clocks to maintain alignment with the astronomical day. Without such synchronization, internally generated rhythms would gradually drift away from environmental cycles. Research into light entrainment has produced some of the most significant discoveries in modern chronobiology. Scientists originally assumed that circadian responses to light depended entirely upon visual pathways involving rods and cones. Environmental evidence eventually demonstrated that this assumption was incomplete. Animals lacking conventional visual receptors could still synchronize circadian rhythms to light. Subsequent investigations identified specialized retinal cells containing a photopigment known as melanopsin. These cells contribute to non-visual responses to light and provide critical information to the circadian system. Their discovery transformed scientific understanding of the relationship between light and physiology. The distinction between visual and non-visual responses to light is important. Vision requires detailed spatial information. Circadian entrainment requires information about the timing and intensity of environmental illumination. The circadian system therefore uses light differently from the visual system. Its primary concern is not identifying objects, but determining whether environmental conditions correspond to day or night. This non-visual response to light influences numerous physiological processes, including alertness, hormone regulation, body temperature, and seasonal adaptation. Light therefore functions not merely as a source of visual information, but as a powerful biological signal that contributes to the organization of physiological time. Chronotypes and human diversity. One of the most familiar manifestations of circadian variation is the existence of chronotypes. Individuals differ substantially in their preferred timing of sleep and activity. Some people naturally wake early and become sleepy early in the evening. Others prefer much later schedules. Chronobiologists refer to these differences as chronotypes. Popular culture often describes them as larks and owls. But the scientific concept encompasses a continuous distribution rather than a simple division into categories. Most individuals fall somewhere between both extremes. Chronotype is influenced by multiple factors, including genetics, age, and environmental conditions. Children generally exhibit earlier chronotypes. During adolescence, circadian time shifts later, producing a tendency toward delayed sleep and wake schedules. Around early adulthood, this trend reaches its peak before gradually reversing over subsequent decades of life. These age-related changes have important implications for educational systems. Many secondary schools, excuse me, require adolescents to begin academic activities at times that may conflict with biological tendencies towards later sleep schedules. Chronobiological research therefore raises questions about whether institutional schedules align with the developmental characteristics of the populations they serve. Environmental conditions also influence chronotype distributions. Strong exposure to daylight combined with dark nights tends to produce earlier and more concentrated distributions. Modern urban environments often generate weaker timing signals. Reduced exposure to daylight and increased exposure to artificial illumination after sunset contribute to later circadian timing and greater variation among individuals. Industrial society and social jet lag. The transition to industrial and urban societies has fundamentally altered human relationships with environmental time. For most of human history, daily life was closely linked to natural cycles of light and darkness. Industrialization introduced new forms of temporal organization based upon mechanical clocks, standardized schedules, artificial lighting, and continuous economic activity. These developments have produced what chronobiologists describe as social jet lag. Social jet lag refers to the mismatch between biological time and socially imposed schedules. It emerges when individuals are required to function according to institutional timetables that differ from their endogenous circadian timing. The widespread use of alarm clocks provides a useful illustration. Individuals typically require alarm clocks when social obligations demand waking before biological processes would naturally produce wakefulness. In effect, external schedules override internal timing mechanisms. The consequences extend beyond sleep duration. Social jet lag creates a recurring discrepancy between biological and social time that resembles the temporal disruption associated with travel across time zones. Unlike conventional jet lag, however, social jet lag may occur repeatedly throughout an individual's life. This phenomenon has become increasingly common because modern societies frequently require early work and school schedules while simultaneously exposing populations to patterns of evening illumination that delay circadian timing. The result is a systematic conflict between biological organization and social expectations. Health consequences and future directions. An expanding body of research suggests that chronic circadian disruption is associated with a wide range of health outcomes. Studies have reported relationships between circadian misalignment and metabolic disorders, cardiovascular disease, psychiatric conditions, sleep disturbances, and increased risks for certain cancers. Shift work provides one of the clearest examples of sustained circadian disruption. Workers required to remain active during biological night and sleep during biological day often experience profound challenges maintaining synchronization between internal and external time. The resulting physiological strain has become a major focus of chronobiological research. The implications of chronobiology extend well beyond sleep science. Researchers increasingly advocate for the incorporation of biological timing into medicine, architecture, education, and workplace design. Clinical environments are exploring lighting systems designed to support circadian health. Educational institutions are reconsidering school start times. Architects and urban planners are investigating how built environments influence exposure to biologically relevant light. These developments reflect a broader recognition that temporal organization constitutes a fundamental dimension of human biology, just as nutrition, exercise, and environmental conditions influence health, so too does the relationship between biological time and social time. Chronobiology therefore presents a challenge to many assumptions underlying modern life. Industrial societies have become highly effective at organizing activity according to mechanical clocks. Biological systems, however, continue to operate according to rhythms shaped by evolutionary history. Understanding how these systems interact may prove essential for addressing some of the most significant health, social, and environmental questions of the 21st century. Thank you.